Buckle up. It's time for the Champions of Cinema podcast.
Welcome, sports fans, to the Ultimate Cinematic Arena. I'm your host, Joe Walker, and this is the Champions of Cinema podcast. Fellow producer James Marshall and I are diving deep into the heart-pounding world of sports films, the victories, the defeats, the unforgettable moments that make us cheer, cry, and believe in the power of the underdog. It's Season 3, Episode 8, and today we're revisiting the greatest Rocky story ever told in a reintroduction of old foes. It's the final outing and ultimately a goodbye for Rocky Balboa. It's Creed 2.
Creed 2.
Creed
2. Rocky 4.5. Or Rocky 4 2.
Okay, Rocky 4. Yeah, Rocky 42. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's madness to me. That's far too much. James, before we get started in this episode, here's 5 reasons why people should watch Creed 2.
Adonis Creed faces the ultimate test, fighting Viktor Drago, the son of the man who killed his father, exploring themes of legacy, redemption, and personal growth.
Creed 2 dives deep into Adonis' journey of identity and family, whilst also exploring Rocky's emotional evolution and struggles with his past.
Michael B. Jordan, Sylvester Stallone, and Florian Montaño bring their A-game, delivering standout performances that add emotional depth to the film.
The film's tight choreography and intense training montages will keep you on the edge of your seat, especially the epic showdown between Adonis and Viktor.
The movie blends physical battles with emotional depth, highlighting the father-son dynamics and the quest for redemption within both the Creed and Drago families.
And I think, for me, this one, we might be starting to hit a real stride with the Creed series within the Rocky universe.
Definitely, yeah.
This one's kind of special to me. I think the way that it plays on the history between Rocky 4 and this new breed of Rocky being Creed, kind of special, right?
Yes, I think like the Creed 1, we set the stage. It was like, okay, here's our new character. This is his origins. This is what he's about. This is his sort of personal struggles. This is all the exposition was set, and we had a lovely bit. He loses the fight in the end of Creed 1, but it's clear that like, okay, the time is yours, now it's your opportunity to become the world champion. And we don't get like the Rocky 3 kind of intro where it's like Rocky, is winning lots of fights. He's like he's defended his title like half a dozen times or something. He's just, we start off with him obviously winning, finally becoming world champion for the first time. And then goes into this. So he's not like an experienced champion. He's still a fresh champion. There's actually elements of inexperience still, rather than, what we saw in Rocky 3 and 4 of him being really experienced. So it's not necessarily mirroring the progression from the Rocky films in sequence. It's still kind of like he's still developing a lot at this point. And actually, this will be his biggest test at the moment in this film.
Sounds good. I like it. I'm excited for this one. I watched it again last night and thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly found that it was exactly what I enjoyed the first time I watched it. Even though those 2 watchings were a little bit of time apart. And this one's starting to creep up. There's this. I know we've talked about how we're going to end this series with episode 10 being our review of the Rocky movies and doing like an awards ceremony for them.
Yeah.
I think we might see Creed 2 in a couple of contentions for high ratings in the overall series.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Before we get started, though, and before we start dissecting, James, tell me what you've been watching recently.
I've been watching a lot recently, I have to say. Last Sunday, I watched all the Batman films, all of Christopher Nolan's Batman films.
Always
very,
good.
Very enjoyable, very good. I watched The Prestige.
Yeah, you're on a bit of a Nolan tip.
A Nolan tip, yeah. It's just a stupidly good film, to be honest. I just think like it's like twist and then another twist and then another twist and then it's like, gosh, this is just insane. I completely forgot David Bowie was in that film. I was like, that's David Bowie, which is great, very cool. I watched Ad Astra yesterday. That was cool.
Well, you've been on your modern Christopher Nolan take. I have been watching the predecessor to Nolan quite a lot in the last couple of weeks, and I have been deep diving into Stanley Kubrick movies.
Nice.
And really enjoying those. So I watched what did I watch? Barry Lyndon last week, and this week I watched A Clockwork Orange. So
Cool.
some fantastic movies, but nice in some ways to get away from sports movies for a little bit. But being able to come back and watch this after watching something like that, you can really appreciate that the cinematography in sports movies has improved over the time that we've been watching them.
Mm-hmm.
The story has, the general acting and the general use of themes and all those kinds of things. So really excited to pick this one apart today. This movie might have some of the best themes happening in any of the movies that we've talked about. And in our preamble, sort of 5 reasons to watch, we talked about a couple of those. I think the stuff about father-son dynamics is excellent in this. I think the stuff about family is a really incredible sort of way of looking through the lens of a sports movie at a couple of those ideas. But what's something that we're going to talk about this episode is that handing of the torch over by Stallone to Michael B. Jordan, and the handing over of a few other things throughout the movie. So yeah, we're going to pick this one apart. We're going to get into it. We're going to really dissect what's fantastic about Creed 2. But before we do, can you give me your Japanese poem, your haiku, explaining the story of Creed 2, James?
Okay. Both fight for father, one dead and one forgotten. Old wounds return.
Ooh, very clever dissection of that. Because the question of who's dead and who's forgotten could be asked. Has who is actually forgotten and who is actually dead? That's the question we might have to ask ourselves. I love it. Brilliant way of looking at things. I think this is what is like the ultimate payoff of Rocky IV into a new movie. And I think when somebody came up with this idea,
it's kind of like a sequelizer, right? It's like it's kind of thing we'd maybe picture in our sequelizers.
Absolutely,
it's that kind of story. Yeah, it's good.
Very, very clever stuff. So really enjoyable. We're not going to mess about too much on this one. I'll quickly give you some key statistics and information. So written again by Sylvester Stallone, directed by Stephen Capel Jr., who isn't who hasn't directed very much at all, but he picked it up because Stallone stepped back from being the director for the movie.
Right.
Made in 2018, budget of $50 million, earnings of $214 million, which makes it in the top 5 Rocky films that has ever been made. IMDb rating of 7.1, which is quite high, I think, and a Rotten Tomatoes of 83%. If we look against Rocky IV, Rocky IV has a Rotten Tomatoes of 39 and an IMDb of 6.9, so this outrates Rocky IV, but it didn't outrate Rocky IV in the earnings. Rocky IV made $300 million. So
is that number one? Is that as Rocky IV made the most?
Yeah, Rocky IV has made the most.
I mean, I think that's based on the timing of that film, really, isn't it? It's like that was mid 80s. Just cold. Like you can imagine at that point, anything with a Russian villain is just like everyone's going to go into the cinemas to watch that.
Absolutely. So, if you want a better villain than that, you have to make one out of thin air. They have to be non-human to be better than that.
They have to have absolutely ridiculous. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into this one and start dissecting the different acts of it. And we're going to start off with Act 1, Legacy and Challenge. Adonis Creed is at the peak of his boxing career, having just won the heavyweight championship. He proposes to his girlfriend Bianca, and they begin building a new life together, even as she copes with progressive hearing loss.
Adonis's world is shaken when Viktor Drago, the son of Ivan Drago, the man who killed his father Apollo Creed, challenges him to a fight. Ivan has raised Viktor in the shadow of his own disgrace and sees this bout as a way to restore their family name. Rocky warns Adonis against accepting the fight, fearing it's driven by pride and vengeance rather than strategy.
Love the start of this film.
Great start, yeah.
Let's put is it Danny Wheeler? I want to say it's Danny Wheeler, but I don't know if the name is Danny. Let's put Wheeler to bed and get our blacked out Mustang back for a start.
Yeah.
Let's just we'll win the world championship there. No real lead in, no real cares in the world. It was always going to be an easy win. And then let's get straight into a new challenge, a new problem, and that is the man who killed your father is back and his son wants to kill you.
You killed my father.
Prepare to die.
Prepare to die.
Couple of things that I wanted to pick up just from the start of this. Let's talk about Viktor Drago just really quickly. Looked incredible. The actor was absolutely fantastic. Florian Munteanu looks incredible. He looks like a monster.
Oh, yeah.
Romanian-born amateur boxer, but also an actor. He is everything that you'd want in a big bad guy, I think, at the end of this one. But they do some very clever things with him really early on. This whole scene of being up on the Rocky steps, father and son looking out and getting...
Stupid scene, yeah, stupidly.
Getting there. It's almost like they're going and stealing the perspective of their opponent. They're like, this is where they come and run. This is where they come to get strong and understand how to beat people. But we're going to do the same thing.
Yeah, it's that. But it's also kind of like it's showing, because he's obviously been telling his son his whole, the same way how watches previous fights of Rocky and... Sorry, how Adonis watches previous fights on YouTube of like his dad or Rocky. You can imagine, obviously, Ivan's son, Viktor, is going to be will have a understanding of Ivan's career and what happened and Ivan's downfall, and it's kind of like him taking him to Philadelphia, showing how like all of Rocky's success that he's had, his legacy, people running up the stairs, the statue that was made of him, that was what was taken away from Ivan. That was what was meant for Ivan. Ivan was supposed to be the Soviet athlete poster child. He's supposed to be the hero of his country. But after losing that fight to Rocky, he was cast away like a runt in the litter. He was gone. Kind of ended his life. And for almost 40 years, he's been, just probably thinking about Rocky every day. Thinking about like, this 100%. Is the guy which took everything away from me.
Oh, absolutely. And what's really clever is we get possibly one of the greatest Rocky scenes for me, and that is Rocky turning up at his restaurant and being met by...
So many good scenes have happened in that restaurant, man. I want to go there. I wonder if it's an actual restaurant.
It is. It is an actual restaurant.
Called Adrian's?
No, it's called something else, and they just put the Adrian sign up over it.
Do they keep the Rocky photos in there?
I don't think so. I don't think so. But maybe we should go on our trip to Philadelphia.
Exactly. Yeah. That'd be cool.
So talk to me quickly about that Ivan in the restaurant scene. What makes that so special? Why is it such a good scene?
Well, first of all, it's clear that they haven't met since that fight.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rocky had a relationship with lots of his his former opponents. Obviously, he's very close to Apollo, very close to who's the guy which worked in the restaurant? Spider Rico. Nothing much about Clubber Lang, but it's boxing's a small world. You meet people again, and it's like, oh hey, how's it going? And it's like ultimately you're respectful to your opponent.
Yes.
It's like when Rocky enters his restaurant and his, the manager's name, whoever's working there, says, "Oh, there's a guy here waiting for you." And it's like, who? And obviously he's like, he doesn't know immediately who it is because he only sees the back of his head, and it's like when he goes around to see the front of him, he's like, "Is that you?" He's like, he's just like, this is a guy who's seeing. Like, it's almost like you can see...
It's a ghost, isn't it?
It's a ghost of his past. Yeah, because he's clearly tried the events of Rocky 4, whilst for us has been like, for me, Rocky 4 is, is like the peak Rocky film. I think we've discussed this. I think it's the soundtracks I listen to the most. It's the, I think every couple of weeks I put on that final fight with War by Vince DiCola in the background.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just an insane movie in terms of like the height of the franchise and kind of like the stakes that were there. And then, but obviously for Rocky, it was very much a personal fight which he wanted to get out the way. And after the fight was done, he wanted to kind of get it out of his head.
Divorce himself from it.
Divorce himself from it.
It's a moment in time that Rocky has moved on from.
So let's not
and
forget.
Doesn't that sort of play on the idea that Drago was moved on from by the Russian people?
But also Ivan hasn't forgotten Rocky.
No, he's just been living in his
But then
pain,
Rocky has forgotten Ivan, and that's that kind of pain as well, from like showing like who's like, how are they carrying this pain? One person's decided to forget it, and one person has held on to that anger and that whole time. But also considering the fact that like Rocky never went to since Apollo's funeral, never met Dolores. They've not communicated, and the fact that, as Ivan points out, there are no photos of their fight in the restaurant. So as far as anyone else is concerned, for when they probably talk about it, there's very little discussion, there's very little memory of that fight ever actually happening.
Yeah, kind of strange, isn't it, that he's sort of removed that whole period. But let's just live in the world of Rocky's mind for a minute. He goes out, he loses his best friend, he goes out and fights this guy and wins, and then, brings hands across the ocean between Russia and America. Rocky comes back from the USSR, and all of his fortune has disappeared due to Paulie's, incompetence when it comes to financial situation.
Yeah, financial management.
So it's almost like Rocky's just said, well, I don't want to think about Apollo dying. I don't want to think about going out to Russia. I don't want to think about losing all my money. I'm going to forget all of that period of my life. And I'm just going to chop the whole thing of it out because, that's when it all started really going to shit, and I was no longer driving around my Maserati and, all those kinds of things. So I think that that's maybe quite an interesting thought, is that he's just divorced himself from it. The world has forgotten about it. I do wish maybe we'd had a little bit more play on Drago. I think maybe we were a little bit shortchanged on some Drago story here that we could have had a little bit more. But I've got some interesting stuff for you. So obviously, Ivan Drago coaches differently to anybody that we've seen coach in the whole series yet. I don't think he even coaches like his own coaches. He's so much more drastic, so much more, we don't have the money, we don't have any of this stuff, and I'm going to punch you to wake you up. I'm going to do all of these kinds of things. He is an interesting coach. He's an abusive coach within reason. And the only way that he can get away with that is because it's his son that he's doing it to. A little bit of information for you is that Dolph Lundgren collaborated with the director Stephen Caple Jr. to change his physique and age the character of Drago to visually translate the poverty and suffering that they've endured since being let go by the Russians. And he even coloured his teeth yellow for this movie.
Yeah, of course, because you'd have had veneers or something as a Hollywood actor. So that makes sense.
So it's like, it's very clever way of getting to, this is what we've been through as a result of, not a result of anything other than as a result of Rocky, as a result of this guy. If I'd never fought that guy, I'd probably be the world champion, and I probably would have had a great life and a great career, and I would be a Russian hero. Are we missing a Drago story, do you think? Would it be a fun spin-off movie of what happened to him after?
I don't know. I don't know if there's enough depth to Drago. Like he represented the Soviet athlete. He was had state facilities and stuff. He was a state-sponsored athlete essentially. and I don't know. I mean, Ivan's story is a tragedy, you know, but what would like a spin-off film have been about? Would it have been like a prequel?
I think
we know about how
I think a prequel to Creed 2 about how Ludmilla leaves him, how he feels lost, how he's left with nothing, and he's left with a son that he has to bring up, and how difficult that is for him. How dealing with his own sense of loss and sense of, what is his sense of self. Maybe that's just my feeling, because I love a tragic story, and I like an athlete downfall story as well. That's maybe something that I just enjoy. So
what's interesting is that, like, if you think back to Rocky 4, it was that Rocky 4 won that because of, it was an unstoppable force versus an immovable object, right? I mean, like, really, if we're going based on, like, what do they call it? Like, 3 down count, or what's it called? Like, no third count or something? Like, when you get knocked down the third time, the fight's over.
Third knockdown rule, yeah.
Right. Yeah, Rocky got knocked down like 6 or 7 times or something, that Rocky 4 fight.
Yeah.
But ultimately, Rocky never went down for the full count. He won because of his mental toughness was better. He had better mental toughness than Drago. And, he had that mental toughness because of, the training in those harsh environments in Russia, but he also had the love in his corner from Duke and Paulie.
And
Adrian. Whereas Ivan didn't have that.
That's really
good. He had his coach turn on him. He had his own wife kind of like say, get up, whatever, like not really giving that emotional support. So what's Ivan learned from this? He's not really learned anything. He's now he's treating his son really the same way that he was been treated, and that's kind of been confusing for me until the very end of the film. There's that kind of like character development, but he's still kind of, I feel like we won't get into it too much, but I think like, Ivan hasn't really, nothing's changed in Ivan. That's why I think it would be hard to have a new film with Ivan, because he's not changed anyway.
Is that, and here's a bit of coaching speak for you, is that because he's not able to move off the bottom 2 levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? He's not able to understand himself. He's not he's not able to get above the bottom of the pyramid. He's got, he's barely surviving. He's not able to self-actualize. He's not able to work out what his problem was. He's not able to go through therapy. He's not able to go through understanding why he has become the person he's become, and he's stuck in his
it's probably that
doom loop of, well, I'm just going to make my son a killer then,
And we'll go back to, and I think we'll come back to this at the end of Act 3, but I think we get that moment. There's a clearly defined moment where we see that self-realization and that kind of learning from Ivan.
Okay.
But I think at this point, it's like he's doing exactly this. He's not changed anything. He's not learned anything really. It's just like, my son is going to beat your boy Rocky because he's just bigger, stronger, hungrier, blah blah blah. It's like, well, that didn't work for you the first time, so why do you think it's going to work for you the second time? It's like,
it's good. The question I've got to ask you about here is, we get something quite epic that happens. What epic? Quite important that happens, and that is that Adonis and Bianca decide to move back to California. And here's something that I've got to ask you. So there's this moment where Adonis, she asks, so we move back to California. There's the recording studios out there, all this blah blah blah, all this stuff. And Adonis says, well, what about Rocky? And she says, well, Rocky's got his own life. And is Bianca being a little bit selfish there, do you think? Or, because, in essence, this is what got Adonis to where it got him.
Selfish, but also, like, would Rocky say anything different? Would Rocky
No, Rocky wouldn't.
Rocky would probably say... Rocky would say the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Adonis is a California guy. He ultimately moved away from LA because he couldn't get coached by the Duke gym. And he wanted, so he was like, well, I got to go find Rocky, and that was the whole premise of the movie. But I guess it's like, at some point, people usually go back to where they came from, because it's what they know. It's also where his mum is. I guess it's just like, I guess she's maybe being selfish, but at the same time, it's like, what are you going to do? Are you just going to stay there until Rocky's gone? I mean, I think like Rocky's constantly wanting to get out of boxing. He's always trying to get that way out. He just wants to like, sort of live his last years. Ultimately, he is kind of just longing for Adrian. He always feels like he's just waiting for death, which is quite sad. But, he had this new sort of lease of life as a result of, meeting Adonis. And, he does also feel like he has a responsibility to kind of make up for, he still sort of claims, takes upon the death of Apollo as his own fault.
Yes.
And therefore feels like he's like, in order to kind of make up for that, to make amends for that, he has to kind of look after Adonis to an extent and make sure that he goes, that he is safe and that he's trained the right way, blah, blah, blah.
Here's a question for you.
So it's,
Here's a question. Is the moving away from Philly massively symbolic about how it changes Adonis in his ability to be a gritty, powerful, strong fighter? Because he goes there, they move, and then he loses to Drago. He's not quite the same boxer. He's getting coached by Duke, or Little Duke, if we call him that. But there's a change to him. Is this almost like the backwards effect of Rocky 3? Where
that's what I was just thinking. It's like Rocky 3's those aspects of like losing that, like, okay, you can have the technique and stuff, you can have the training. There's almost some interesting like Batman versus Bane there. It's like, okay, like you can have the techniques and all the tricks and stuff, but like
he's a monster.
Do you have he's a monster. Do you have the mentality for that?
Yes. That bit where Rocky says to him, he says, he's dangerous, and he says, I'm dangerous. And they come back to that in the final fight as well. And Rocky tells him he's dangerous as well. Really clever stuff. But there's that bit where
when you're afraid and scared, or what can you stop? Can you avoid that sort of fear? Can you take the hits? That sort of mental toughness that like comes with hunger, that sort of dissipates with being content.
Yes, that's so good. Once the thought of losing has entered your mind, you've already lost.
Exactly.
It's incredible.
That's kind of, and it's like that Creed is very different in his first fight with Viktor to his second fight with Viktor, and actually we see Viktor flip as well, the other direction. So
let's get into that. Let's start talking about Act 2. So give us the beginning of Act 2, James.
Act 2, Injury and Reflection. Driven by emotion and a desire to avenge his father's death, Adonis accepts the challenge without Rocky's support. The fight is brutal. Though Adonis retains his title due to disqualification, he is badly beaten and emotionally shattered.
The birth of his daughter brings both hope and new fears, as she's born with hearing loss. Adonis struggles with self-doubt, drifting from the closest to him. Meanwhile, Viktor is pushed relentlessly by Ivan, who seeks validation from a world that turned its back on him. So many good things in the middle of this movie. So many
very
ideas.
Rocky 3, right?
Really got lots and lots of Rocky 3 stuff. Here's something
Creed's first fight without his mentor, like how Rocky had lost because he didn't have Mickey.
No, exactly.
In Rocky 3,
yeah.
And he's afraid, and it's like once you're afraid, you lose your guard, you're just a weaker version of yourself.
Yeah. So I wanted to pick up on this. So we're doing it without Rocky. We're working with Duke now, and what I love is Duke's realistic perspective, and there's what I've referred to as the We'll See montage, which is his training montage before he faces Ivan the first time. And it's a good montage, but it shows the dualities of the training, where it's like we're training at Merriweather Gym, we're training, in Ukraine or in America, and we're training, we're doing hard training for Drago. It's very clever storytelling, very clever way of doing things, and that Duke has the same way of seeing the future as his father did. He ain't right for you, baby. Those kinds of things. And he's like, "Are you ready for this?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready." And we're like, "Oh well, we'll see, we'll see." It's perfect for me, really clever. And then when we move on to the Drago fight, Drago's too strong and angry, and without the mercurial Rocky, Creed is just not the same fighter. Was it a clever idea to have the disqualification as a way to lose the fight, in inverted commas, but without really having a loss?
Yeah, I mean, it was a completely hollow victory, wasn't it? It's like there wasn't any sort of like feeling like, oh yeah, he won. It was just like wow, he got beaten up.
Mm-hmm.
He got smacked around.
Mm-hmm.
He got ribs broken, like just absolutely pummeled. I mean, as we know, he goes to the hospital. It's like his eyes bashed up. He's got kidney damage. He's pissing blood. Like he got beaten up. It is embarrassed. And when he's on the wheelchair, he is just completely shattered. It's like, it's very much like, I keep thinking, because I probably watched it like a week ago. It's like Batman when he goes to that prison, the pit. He is just broken, and he's just like, I don't know what to do.
I think that's the best acting by Michael B. Jordan in any of the movies we've seen so far.
Yeah.
He lying there, you can see that he is, he hasn't lost his belt, but he's broken. He's a broken man. And then, he's Duke's talking to him and saying, "Look, it's okay, you're going to retain your title because it's a disqualification." Rocky comes in, and I thought it was very close. I don't think you've necessarily seen Ben-Hur, the movie, the Charlton Heston 1950s movie. No. But there's this moment where, in that movie, the main characters meet each other after one of them has lost a pretty epic chariot race, but he's lying there broken, and he needs to have his legs amputated. And his, the opponent comes in and sees him, and he's like, "Did you come to see what was left of me?" And there's almost a moment of that. I'll share it with you at some point, where Rocky walks in, and it's like, "Oh, you came to pick the pieces up." And I think it's almost a shot for shot exact sort of remake of that. So once we finish recording today, let's watch that, and then you can see what you think. Just a couple of things. So I think that small chat between Rocky and Duke is brilliant in the hospital. Did you notice what Tessa Thompson was wearing in the first Drago fight?
In the first Drago fight, I didn't. In the second fight, I thought that looked very Adrian-y, but I didn't see the first. Well, what was she wearing in the first fight?
A beret.
A beret, yeah.
She's wearing like a beige beret. So it's got this whole thing about it, which I thought, excellent. Really, really good stuff. And then, so it's a good fight. It's shown really well. We show that there's almost a lack of coach-athlete relationship a little bit between Duke and Adonis at this point. They haven't quite gelled. They haven't quite built an understanding of each other, which is really cool and very, very interesting to see. And it sets up how we're going to train differently in Act 3 and how we're going to fight differently in Act 3 for possibly the best way of like turning around in a movie that I think we've seen since Rocky 3. I think maybe you could say maybe Rocky 4 it's got elements of Rocky 4. It's got elements of Rocky 3 in there as well. Without any more ado, let's get straight into Act 3, and then we'll really talk about the meat of this experience. Love it. I think Act 2 for me had some of the most feeling, and almost I wanted to just spend a lot of time in it. But you've got to move on to that Act 3 and that redemption part of the story at the end of it, and see how that plays out. So we're going to talk about Act 3. Redemption and identity. With time, healing, and Rocky's return to his corner, Adonis begins to train again, this time with a deeper sense of purpose. He understands he's not just fighting to settle the score, but to define his own legacy. In a climactic rematch set in Russia, Adonis and Viktor face off. The bout is grueling and emotional, but Adonis ultimately emerges victorious.
In the end, both fighters find a form of peace. Adonis by embracing his identity as a father, a fighter, and a son, and Viktor by recognizing his worth beyond his father's approval. Rocky steps back, proud of Adonis, and reconciles with his own estranged son.
Okay, there's so much to unpack in this. In this stuff. Let's talk about Russia first and foremost, and one of the super scenes for me, because we get a character reveal.
Yeah.
One, Drago gets given shorts that are the coolest fucking shorts so far.
Yeah.
They might be cooler than the Stars and Bars
Let's just
shorts.
Oh, don't say that! That's heresy. That is blasphemy.
I think they're brilliant.
Well, let's get out of the way then. If we're doing our like prop item of the film, it's that. Yeah, we'll say that probably.
Yeah, maybe.
We do like the
absolutely. We'll keep this. We'll keep this in. I think Drago's Russian shorts are 100% on my wall. I'm taking those home with me. I'm absolutely keeping Creed's Black Mustang. What I'm also keeping, though, is I'm keeping Creed's black and grey Stars and Bars whole attire. The ring, his ring robe, and then the new black on grey shorts are just, they are incredible. They are incredible.
Yeah, it's just something about the Stars and Stripes shorts for me.
You don't like them in black and grey?
Oh, I see. So it's the same. It's the
muted
shorts, but just black and white. Yeah,
no, not black and white. They're black and grey. You have to go. There's a couple. You have to go down a couple of pictures, but yeah. They're black.
Yeah,
and grey.
that's nice. They're cool. No,
they're incredibly cool. They're not just cool. They're incredibly cool.
I didn't even notice. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, nice.
Oh, they're so good. Sweet. But the Russian shorts for me, they're red, white, blue, and gold. They've just got so much special going on about them, and even the writing, the Drago writing on them, is that font incredible. Is perfect. I thought it was amazing, and then they're having that meal. They're sat around a table. Everybody's sort of like, you're the new guy. We're very proud of you. We're going to give you all of the support. And then who just waltzes in? But his mum. With the same haircut 30 years later.
Yeah.
Now banging the Russian premier or whoever she's banging, some sort of member of the party. I don't know what you
athletics board or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And she's still pretty hot, right?
I mean, she's gonna be like what, 60 here?
Yeah, but she's still got it. Yeah,
she's pretty good for 60. Yeah, not bad. Yeah,
100%. I thought that was a really clever and telling scene.
Let's just. I mentioned here, this not just Ivan's ex-wife, but also Stallone's actual ex-wife. That's quite funny too,
I don't know if did we ever get a moment where they look at each other in the final fight.
I don't think so. No, not at all.
Maybe that's to save them for that. They were never on set at the same time.
Maybe, yeah. Very well could be. Yeah.
Absolutely. And then we get this dual action training montage of Rocky saying we've got to change everything, and they go and train in the desert. Whereas Drago's now training in a nice training camp in Russia with like shades of Rocky 4 going on, where it's like, you've got a really nice place. You've got So when we talked about this in our preamble, is the discussion that we had is this idea that there's a complete shift of who's going through hell now to get ready for this fight, and who's got the silk sheets now for this fight. And it's almost like, I think the story of this for me is like, if you want to be successful, if you want to win, you can't do it with having a nice training camp and having nice things. You have to go through the hell. I think that the desert was I don't know how they came up with that idea, but it's inspired. Just hitting the ground with a sledgehammer over and over and over, to me was perfection. And then that bit, the scene where he's doing a lot of sparring where he's got to have his foot in the tire to get close.
Very good. Yeah, I think that's probably a real thing. I guess when we're trying to develop like actual toe-to-toe fighting,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like, rather than keep like avoiding the distance, like closing the distance. I think I can imagine. I don't know. Maybe the boxing experts, people that actually train boxing properly are listening, but like. That feels like a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit kind of like, it seems simple, and it's obviously like it's not very scientific. You're just literally keeping both fighters' feet in the same tire. I feel like that would be very transferable if you're trying to like develop on like keeping the distance close. Because I think like what the strategy is like take the fight to him. Is like don't back down, don't be afraid. It's about building that kind of mental toughness and of not backing down, which is kind of like, what are you going to say?
No, yes. I was just going to say yes.
Oh, yeah.
You're absolutely right. But also,
yeah,
it's for the first time, in my eyes, in almost any Rocky movie, we finally got a tactical plan. And a tactical plan that is being used and
what do you
properly.
mean? Rocky 3 was a tactical plan. We're gonna do some dancing. We're gonna dance around.
We're gonna
some music.
Run in the sea. We're gonna wear crop tops and we're gonna hug each other.
Yeah.
This one,
Very
for the first time,
when
we get into the fight for this one, it's the first time where Rocky's like, "You've got to do this." He's actually saying to him, "You've got to get close. You've got to avoid these things, and you've got to hit him in these ways." It feels like for the first time we've really got almost like a, if we were talking about a football movie, it's like them saying, "Look, the corners are playing soft. We've got to do X, Y, and Z." It's the first time we've ever got there.
Really love that. We won't talk about the fight just yet, but also that montage I think was great because you can see Adonis develop his mental toughness. If we just take the bits where he's running behind the Mustang in the heat of some Nevada desert or whatever, it's probably like 40 degrees plus, just a ridiculous environment to train in. He goes from like just like kind of like really hating it. He's clearly like not mentally like focused because he's just adjusting to this new environment. And then the last scene of the whole montage is him just stone cold, just like
super focused,
laser focused, just like it's like, oh, okay, he's ready. Like this is great.
They do a really good job, don't they, of showing that progression over time.
He is calloused. He is like he is prepared to go into hell now. Because they even use that line like if you're gonna fight in hell, you got to train in hell. Yeah,
if you want to give pain, you've got to be willing to take the pain. Is the line that he uses, and that was one of the best lines. Yeah.
So it's that perfect mirror of Rocky 4. Is like we know it's going to Rocky can't train to be a better boxer necessarily. Because he's just not a better boxer than Ivan, probably based upon like size, and hitting power, and speed. But in terms of mental toughness, you can train that. And it's like if you want it more than Viktor, you can get that, and we get that similar. I think there's at that point where like, okay, Viktor's ahead on points in the fight.
Yes.
So you just got to get him down. You just have to last longer than him. That's why it ultimately happens.
There's something. So there's a recurring theme here, isn't there, for any sports movie, and that is always the final bout, the final fight, the final game, the final everything is always against a superior opponent physically, but that you win because you try harder.
Desire.
Yeah. There's the desire and fire over the physical opponent, or you're more clever than the physical opponent. It's this is just our sports movie trope through and through, isn't it? Is that thing?
That's the underdog. That's how the underdog wins ultimately, right? It's because like the bookies only look at like stature and tangibles. They look at this guy's bigger, stronger, faster. He's just like he should win paper, he can't lose.
Yeah.
but like you can't measure willpower. You can't put a number to that. That's just man to man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that's why we love sports as humans, is because it allows us to have those things. Everybody always wants kind of the plucky underdog to win. Do you think billionaires like sports movies, or do you think they're just like, this is horrible? The guy who's got everything going for him always seems to lose to this goddamn little guy with 5 cents in his pocket.
No, exactly. Yeah, sort of thinking like it's a dangerous message to tell people that, like, if you're just because you're the smaller guy in the fight that you can't win, or that you can win actually by watching these films, that you can see that like determination can win.
Yeah, that's a good point. Interestingly, I wonder if we looked back at a couple of sports movies as to where there's something where you can say, actually, the superior, our protagonist is the superior athlete, is the superior team, but the reason that they're now the fight isn't against the superior opponent because the opponent is inferior. The fight is against themselves. Is the only other way that you can do this. It's the any given Sunday is we're killing ourselves here. We're not being beaten by a better team. We're killing ourselves. Really, I love that. So maybe that's a trope. That's a double trope.
Yeah,
for us, James.
Sure.
Let's
talk about the fight then.
Yeah, let's talk about this fight. For a start, entrances brilliant. Love it.
Yep.
Love everything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
We're in Russia. It's got really clever things going on. Talk to me about your takeaways from this fight.
Well, I think again we get a lot of the Rocky IV mirroring, where it's Viktor's on the offensive. Okay, the Drago in the fight is on the offensive, doing most of the damage. And but what with the change is here is that every time that Adonis gets hit, he seems to shake it off.
Yes.
And I want to do a quick shout out to Max Kellerman again, who's now this is like his third film he's in now.
Yes,
he was in Rocky Balboa.
Yes,
and now he's been in both Creed films. He does a great job at kind of highlighting this
through
kind of remind the audience about what Creed development is like. I can't believe what kind of beating Adonis is taking, and he's just sort of getting up, and it's just like it's not affecting him at all.
Yes,
it's that same thing that we saw from Rocky, but when he got hit and knocked down by Ivan in Rocky IV, he just got up, rolled the punches, take the 8 count if you need it, and then get up and go again. I thought it was great, and ultimately we see that bit more, some of the strategy, and we see the fight turn late in the fight, and there's that. I like that. I like the trope that we now, I think we've seen a few times, where it's that realization of like, okay, you can't win on points, so you have to knock him down.
Yes,
it's that kind of like, you have to spend it now.
Yeah,
you kind of have to go on the offensive, and it's kind of like it's a very much all or nothing now. It's not just like, okay, well, if you win these next 3 rounds, then you should be able to win the fight. It's like, no, you have to go all out now. And
that's an interesting thing.
To be honest,
you can only do that in boxing, right? You can only do that in combat sports. Yeah. Imagine if in any other sports game, even though you were losing on the scoreboard, you could win by the other opponent quitting.
You just have to want it more than him and just see how far you can push Ivan. And ultimately, once Ivan gets sort of beat up a bit, and there's that kind of like doubt to creep in.
The cut, just like his father.
The cut.
Yeah.
Just like his father. He's cut. He's cut.
He's not a man. He's not a machine.
He's not a man.
He's a machine.
He's not a machine. He's a man. He's a man. And then ultimately, it's like, and then once his mum in the crowd leaves, and we see that doubt kind of creep in, it's over. It's like the momentum's completely shifted, and you almost feel bad now for Viktor, because now in the last round he's just getting completely smacked around. Even like there's a bit even where like Dolores in the crowd is being like, ooh, like,
yeah.
Wow. Like even though it's his son dealing the damage now, it's kind of like, fuck, wow. And then this is where we get that kind of self-actualization from Ivan, being like, it's just history repeating itself.
Yes, yeah.
This is now like the Russia this country is now turning on on another Drago. It
I've
wasn't me, now it's
yeah,
on myself.
I have denigrated my son to my own fate. I've brought my own child to the same fate as me, which is horrid. My hope is that I wonder if there's a bit of nice things for the Dragos. Can the Dragos go back to Ukraine, start a good boxing school, and between the two of them, they raise a bunch of really good fighters over the next, however long? That'd be quite an interesting story.
I'm always trying to think about. When I first watched Creed 2, I was a bit confused about why Ivan threw in the towel, because it's kind of like it's not very Ivan of them to kind of concede defeat. It's kind of like, remember in Rocky 4, they go to the end in the final round when they, it's kind of like it almost seemed off character to do it, but at the same time, there's that kind of.
Is that his redemption?
It's kind of like there's an irony of like how, well, with the first fight with Ivan and Apollo Creed, Rocky didn't throw in the towel, and now Ivan's the one who throws in the towel. It's actually, it might be the first fight we've seen where the coach throws in the towel, I think.
Yes, I think so. Oh, well, did it happen with Clubber? Did he throw in the towel?
I don't know if he just.
I don't know.
I think he just gave up because he was just too tired.
He
got knocked down and he was just too tired.
Yeah.
But there's that kind of like, it's all happening in slow motion. Ivan realizes that his son's getting beaten up, and that he's probably been not the best father, and now he's like, I need, it's almost like he's showing that he cares for his son. He's not just going to let him die in the ring, metaphorically or literally. And now he's going to be like, okay, he doesn't believe that winning, his son needs to win at all costs for his son to be of value to him. It's enough just to be like, okay, he's caring for his son. He's doing it because he loves his son, I think.
Yes.
It's that's the character turn, I think, for him. And that's like, it's kind of like where we talk about character development. It's also on Ivan's side. There's that character development too.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And that's what I think is great about these stories is they don't just, the only movie where we don't get that really is Rocky 3, where we don't really see Clubber develop, and we never get any closure for Clubber, which is quite interesting really, because you can't hate on the guy, but he's just doing what he was trying to do. He's just trying to become his own version of Rocky. Really good post fight. We get the moment of Bianca sort of giving her support of Adonis. We get little Duke giving his support. We get the mother even sort of like being there and being supportive, and then Rocky doesn't get in the ring. Just gives him the fist bump and says, "It's your time now. It's time for you to do it." And that is, if never mind a metaphorical passing of the torch. That's a physical passing of the torch. Just like here you go. You're the franchise face now of the Rocky franchise.
Yeah. It's nice. It's really nice.
Very good. And then we get this gorgeous post fight couple of scenes of Adonis going and visiting his father's grave, saying that he was really sorry for not coming and seeing him sooner, which is just lovely. And then introducing his daughter to him. So he's like, "Here's your granddaughter." That's all very, very good. And that sort of hits with me, because my father's passed away. So, whilst I have never taken my son to my father's grave or when my father's ashes are buried, maybe I will one day. Maybe that'll be something that'd be nice to do. But it touched me. And I think that's what these movies are trying to do. They're trying to touch everybody in different ways. And then we get our final ever, until now anyway, our final ever Rocky Balboa scene of going and reconnecting with his son, played by the same actor from the Rocky Balboa movie.
Yeah, that was nice.
Really clever use of that. And getting to meet his own granddaughter, I think, and he says, "Oh, you look a lot like your grandmother." And he sees Adrian.
He really did. The kid actually did look a lot like Adrian. Yeah.
Kind of cute thing, right?
That would have been deliberate casting, I imagine. That was cool.
But yeah, I think this one really hits in many, many wheelhouses. It's got a lot of positivity going for it, lots of very clever work and lots of clever storytelling. For me, this is really hitting a height of one of the best Rocky movies that we've had, or one of the best cinematic universe movies that we've had. I want to ask you a couple of things that we always talk about on these episodes. One of those is whether... So we've talked about our memorabilia lane being the shorts for both characters. Question I want to ask you is this popcorn fun, or has it got art house qualities?
I think it's got art house qualities. I think it strikes you as entertainment because it's like it's a sequel with old character. Like, I think it's a bit of a cash grab, but I think it's an art house beauty in the sense of it's lots of characters licking old wounds, and there's a lot of lovely symbolism.
Yeah,
and character development. I think it was really well done. I think if you know what the premise is and like what they were trying to achieve, I think they did it. So I want to say it's got lots of art elements to it.
I think you're right. I don't think it's a full art house movie. I think it's a popcorn movie that it's really good popcorn with elements of art house cinematography, elements of being really character driven, being really, being able to be a character study of different thoughts and feelings and challenges, and your child being disabled in the same way as your own child, and the perspective is of everybody in that. Like Rocky, there's that lovely scene where Rocky says, "Are you gonna, what are you gonna do about your daughter? She isn't feeling sorry for herself, and you shouldn't either." That statement's about his daughter's hearing, but the reality is that statement's about Adonis feeling sorry for himself after losing, in inverted commas, to Drago, right? Yeah. Really clever.
Well said, yeah.
There's a couple of really good lines in this, and that's one of them. I really liked that if you want to give pain, you have to be willing to take the pain. And then that he's just a man, be more of a man than him, is a really nice line as well. And then Drago, I think, has one of the best lines in the movie. And he has, "Because of you, I lose everything. My country, respect. You ever see stray dogs in Ukraine? They go for days without food. People spit on them. They are nothing. No home. Only will to survive, to fight." Which, if we're talking about this in 2018, you can sell the Ukrainian being the bad guy. Maybe not so much now.
I think he's a Russian, but this is where it gets confusing because of the old Soviet borders. Because they always said he was Russian in Rocky IV, but he's living in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's because
maybe he's gone to Russia. That's a good shout.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't know if Soviets were called Russians in the Soviet Union. If that makes sense.
I think so.
I don't know if people were called Soviets. I don't know if people in the Soviet Union were called Russians, regardless of what part of the Soviet Union they were from. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Because there were Ukrainian people in the Soviet Union, so I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to get away from Russia. Cause I don't know, but
super lines though, and just some of the best. Not necessarily as good as some of the ones from Creed or Rocky Balboa, but it's got some clever ones in there, and ones that I really like. James, give me a rating. Is it a champion?
It's not a champion.
No,
but. Is it a contender?
Yeah, 100%. It's a contender for me.
I think it's a contender.
Story-wise, the fact that you said it could almost be viewed just as a direct sequel to. You could watch Rocky IV and then watch Creed 2 back to back on each other without anything in between.
Fantastic.
And you could enjoy them.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yes.
I might try that one day. People watch films in different orders. I might try that.
I think that would be a really clever way of watching those two movies back to back. Would be quite clever. Good. No, I think you're right. I think it's a contender. I think it's really strong contender. Has elements of champion in it, but not quite exceeding the movie that set it up. In our eyes. James, it's been really nice to sort of talk about this one and carry through a lot of the ideas about it. feels strange that we're one movie away from the end. It's almost like Michael B. Jordan needs to announce to announce Creed 4, right?
That'd be cool. Yeah. Can you imagine?
I don't know what they can do. I'm not sure what else they can do. I'm super excited for next week for covering Creed 3 because I think it's got the best story of any of the Creed movies potentially. And you've said it's like super intense, so I'm really excited for that. But yeah, this one was clever, really clever, and I think it's got a place in the stars of the Rocky series, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
James, if people want to hear more of our podcasts, where should they go? What should they do?
They can find us on all social medias like Instagram and TikTok at Champions of Cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Or they can write to us. Tell us your thoughts and opinions at championsofcinema@gmail.com.
Yeah, absolutely. And if this is the first Champions of Cinema movie that you've picked up just because you absolutely love Creed 2, why not go back, jump on Spotify, jump on YouTube, go back through our back catalogue of episodes.
Mm-hmm.
James, we're 28 episodes in to our journey now as podcasters.
Wow.
Which is quite incredible. You know, that's nearly, what is it? It's over half a year's worth of movies, or it is exactly half a year's worth of movies.
We've talked for probably over a day's worth. It's probably a day's worth of just talking about movies now.
Oh, 100%. And for
if episodes
and
are like
definitely
around an hour,
AI could now recreate your voice quite comfortably and have you saying whatever it wants to have you saying, I think. But no, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it's been an interesting journey to get this far. Yeah, so if you're listening for the first time, if you want to go back and listen to some of our other movies, if you're interested in movies that aren't in the Rocky Cinematic Universe, Spotify, YouTube, go and give us a listen. Tell us what your favourite movies are, and also this is a great time to comment down below in either of those apps or services to tell us what you think we should be covering in season 4 of the Champions of Cinema. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for coming along with us on this journey. James, have you got anything to say to the people?
I don't know. I won't have a falling catchphrase. No. I was trying to think of something like Rocky would say. No.
No, brilliant. Okay.
Caught me off guard there. Sorry.
Sorry. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to the Champions of Cinema podcast. We've been Joe Walker and James Marshall, and this has been the Champions of Cinema podcast. Goodbye.
Bye.